So first off, everybody, thank you for attending our virtual workshop today, using modern analytics to enable data-driven decisions. We realize these are currently crazy times that we're in, and thank you for setting aside some time to spend with us today. Hopefully this doesn't just provide a distraction, but maybe give you something to think about, how to use modern BI and analytics, and specifically around Power BI, as you'll see today. But again, we're all in this together, so we understand that anybody might have to hop off at some point, given other things you might be dealing with. So we are recording this. At the end, there'll be a survey. There's an option in there to basically select whether or not you want a copy of the recording, and we'll make sure to you have a copy of that so you can kind of catch up what you ever missed on this session. So this is intended to be a hands-on session. There was an email that was sent yesterday, probably came from me, Adam Krieger, and that would kind of give you some prerequisite to test before today's session. If you get in there and having troubles, I'll show you how to kind of get some help along the way. I want to introduce Michelle Workmeister, who is going to be the instructor for today. And I think you're really going to enjoy kind of Michelle's experience of walking you through QuickLaunch and Power BI. Go to the next slide. So, a little bit about ourselves. So again, we've been around 18 years now. We are dedicated to analytics and helping our customers become more data-driven. Our approach is very much a partnership. This is a journey. We look to partner with our customers on their journey to use their data to make better informed business decisions, and that's really, our mission. We've done this for over 200 customers across a variety of different industries and sizes. We're headquartered in California, but we have team members kind of scattered across the country. And next slide. So really, what does it mean to be data-driven? And really we kind of summarize that by empowering the business user to find and use the enterprise information that's most valuable to them. So that's kind of the idea, longer term, about how to better use your data to help drive your business and move the needle in your organization. And so that's kind of how we look at that. And last, 2 more slides and we're getting to the hands-on. So really, Michelle's going to walk you through, once we get started on the actual hands-on part of the session, of what we mean. We refer to a data model and measures and things and calculations of what's going on behind the scenes. But in essence, what we're doing at a very high level is we're taking data from JD Edwards. We're basically putting that into an in-memory data model that we then basically use and connect to with things like Power BI, Excel, or even SSRS. Some customers might use Tableau. So this in-memory data model is really the key to drive end-user adoption, ease of use, and customer success. So that's really, in today, what we're doing in this workshop is you're connecting to a copy of this JD Edwards data model in memory, sitting out there in the cloud in Azure, Microsoft's cloud. And but how you would deploy this internally would be a hybrid. Some things could be running on-prem, everything could be running on-prem for the most part, some things could be sitting out in the cloud. And so there's a whole kind of discussion around how to get from your current source JDE to the end user's hands for something like Power BI. And last slide here, Michelle. So Michelle's going to guide you through this, but just a couple things here. First off is, you log into Power BI. We're going to do this hands-on. It's all going to be using the web-based, Power BI kind of, ad hoc in the cloud. So there's nothing you have to download per se. We do recommend using Google Chrome. Otherwise, depending upon if you have other browsers, I'm not sure which one you'd be using. There might be a little bit more latency. Chrome seems to be most consistently performant. And then as far as your user credentials, so hopefully you've already been able to test and make sure that you've been able to get in. But if my name were Adam Smith, my login, then when I get to that point, will be asmith@biquicklaunch.com. And the password will be let me see with 3s instead of E's. So L3T M3S33. And then, so when you get there, if you have any issues on the GoToMeeting, there should be a way to minimize the GoToMeeting, a little window with a little, I think there's probably like some type of red or orange box with an arrow in it to kind of move it to the side. But there's a chat window there. So feel free to post questions, either in the questions or the chat. So I think there's actually probably both. So go ahead and post questions and we'll respond to those as we go. And then if you also, for whatever reason, having issues there, feel free to email me at Krieger@preferredstrategies.com, and I'll be kind of checking that as well. And then hopefully, if anybody, worst case scenario, if somebody's get stuck and can't get in or something's not working, and if you need to hop off, that's fine. We can send you the recording, or you can kind of just sit back and watch it if you want, and then it still just go at your own pace when we get to the recording later, and we can then work through any issues that you might have. So we hope everybody enjoys the workshop today, and look forward to following up as well if there's anything that you have questions about, post workshop. Again, there'll be a survey at the end to kind of post a few questions there for you to respond to. So thanks everybody again for your time, and hope you enjoyed today's session. Michelle, take it away.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. And welcome everybody to our session today. So I'm excited to present to you guys. I've been looking forward to this session. So I had a teaching experience last night that didn't go so well. I was teaching how to do unit and measure conversions over fractions. I made the student cry. It was rough. So I am hoping that I bring all of you guys joy and excitement today, and you guys come out of this session learning something that you're excited to know about, because I failed last night, but it's okay. I'll redeem myself. We are going to get started with Power BI. As Adam said, he is available to answer your questions. I will not be monitoring the questions as I go. So just know whenever you post the questions, Adam is watching for those. He will answer those as they come up. But I have that window minimized on my side. Otherwise, it just becomes too much for me. So if something comes up from multiple people, don't be surprised. Adam will absolutely jump in and address the question and help to get us back on track. But just be ready for that if that happens. So I am going to hop right in here. We're going to start by just jumping into Power BI. So from the slide deck that's up on the screen right now, you have the www.powerbi.com. So if you guys wouldn't mind opening your browser and navigating to that site, and then we'll go ahead and log in. So as you log in, you should have had your credentials. So it's going to be your first initial last name at biquicklaunch.com with the password of let me see, and we can move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in. I am logged in myself. I have a user profile set up called virtual user, I think, virtual training. I have the exact same credentials that you have in this environment. So you're not going to see me click on anything or do anything that you wouldn't have access to do. Therefore, we'll all be in this together from that perspective. So I am logged in to Power BI, and I am at my home page. This is my home base, and I can come in here as a user. I log in and I'm ready to start my morning. What am I going to do? As a user, they typically consume everything through an app. And by clicking on the app, they're going to get access to reports that were maybe created for them, some dashboards. It's going to take them into the place where they can do all of their job. In order to get to an app, we have to first create a workspace. The workspace is basically everything that we're going to need to use to do our job. We're going to pull everything together. So there's a couple components of a workspace that all come together. We have out here two separate types of workspaces. There's one that's just called workspaces. These are published workspaces. And then there's one called My Workspaces. We are all in an extremely clean environment, and we appreciate that. My workspace is just something that I've created, only I can see it. I'm not sharing it with anybody. Once I'm happy with that, I might publish that out and create more of an operations workspace or a financial workspace, and I want to share that with other members in my organization, share it with my boss, team members, whomever, and we'll put it in the workspaces folder at that point. But we're going to start everything today in my workspaces. So we've preloaded some data out there for you. So you'll notice if you click on my workspace and then click on
Hey,
report.
Michelle.
Yes.
I don't know if we actually showed them where to sign in. So do you mind just maybe
Oh,
signing out and then just hit the sign in so they know if they got to powerbi.com where they
yes. So
might have
I'm
to
just
sign in.
typing from the bar powerbi.microsoft.com. I hit enter and it brings me to the starting page, and I click my sign in button up in the top right. Oh, and I was already signed in, so it just took me right in there. Otherwise, it will prompt you with a enter your username and your password. Do you guys want me to go through that? Are we good? I'll give you
I
one
think you're
moment to
good.
get
Yeah,
signed
just
in. Okay.
give people that. And then if anybody can't get signed in, feel free to post a question and we'll respond.
So, perfect. Once you're signed in, you're going to come in at your home page. All we're going to do is click on My Workspaces. So this is going to be our starting point for this workshop. In My Workspaces, there's four types of elements, I guess, that we can look at. We have dashboards, reports, workbooks, and data sets. The two that I want to focus on right now are the reports and the data sets. The data set at the highest level is going to be where we actually say, this is the information I'm going to build my report over. This is the subset of tables within JD Edwards that I'm going to use to build the report. The report is then where I start pulling that information together. You'll notice on your side and in our demo data here, our data set and our report are named the same thing. This was not by accident. This is actually a best practice that we do at Preferred Strategies as we create our workspaces and we create data sets and reports. We keep them named the same, so it's easy to do that link between a data set and a report. They don't have to be named the same. Some of you might be lost if it doesn't say things like test 1, test 2, good, really good, best. Okay, I get those. That's how my naming convention usually works as well. In here, to navigate into a report, all we're going to do is click on the report name and it will open up a report for me. So as a consumer, if I wanted to come in and start doing my job, I need to know what's going on with our sales. And I use this sales analysis report. This is the report that you guys all saw whenever you registered for this webinar. And it shows me a little bit of information about my sales, my current year sales against my prior year sales. It breaks it out by sales rep, by product groups, and then also sales to gross profit. So that is our report. A report is a story that we're trying to tell about our data. So what do we want to pull in here? How are we going to put that together? Now, a report in Power BI can have multiple pages. In our case, our final report has 2 pages. The pages that we see are the sales analysis workshop page, which is kind of the high-level overview or the introduction, and then a second page, which is sales detail. And this page is actually, we're going to use it as what we call a drill through. So when we're looking at our data, and I'm just navigating through the pages from my pages pane. If you didn't see the pages pane when you came in here, I just clicked right here in the top left corner on pages, and it opened that up. So now I'm in my pages pane, and I can navigate between those. As I'm looking at the data, the awesome thing about Power BI is we want to get users in here and we want to get them excited about their data. We want to also give them the ability to answer their own questions. So if I'm doing some analysis and I say, hey, let's look at appliances. How are we doing on appliances in the West region? All I have to do is come over here to this visualization and I can kind of look and I go, oh, appliances as a whole for our business, it's our second highest line, right? We need to worry about appliances. And then I can look by region that here's the West. And West is doing okay, not quite as good as Central. If I want to look at more detail with that, all I have to do is simply click on it. With Power BI, all of these visualizations, those are what we see, those little cards, they all interact together. So whenever I click on this information, it will actually change up the other visualizations to focus, or they work together. So now these are all showing me for that appliances product line in the West region, what did sales look for? What did the sales look like by sales rep? Well, basically, Paul and Mary are the only ones selling in our Western region. And who are the customers that are purchasing in the Western region? So, in purchasing appliances specifically. And then also, if we look more at the trend chart, how does that look? So, as we click on the different interactions, we're going to see each of these visuals interact with each other. Sorry, as we click on a visual, we'll see them interact with each other, and it will change the data that we're looking at. To get out of this mode, all I have to do is simply click in a white spot in a visual, and it will bring it back to the base report, and I see everything again. So it's very nice because you have this automatic built-in relationship between all of these visuals on a page. A visual is anything that we're looking at that's a picture or representing the data behind it. Now, there's going to be some areas where you want to drill into this information a little bit more. So there is a drill capability that we have on these visuals, and that's where these arrows come into play. So if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at Paul Smith, I can go ahead and click on Paul, and it gives me my interaction with the other visuals. Or if I just simply click the down arrow, I'm just looking now at this visual, it's going to take it from looking at the data for Paul Smith to now looking at it by customer. So I'm still looking at Paul, but I'm looking at it by customer. Okay. So this will take me down a level. Now, if I had another level in here, I could go further. I could continue to drill down. I can also, I'm just doing a right click, I can drill back up. So by clicking on the arrow, it puts you in that mode. So when you click in the visual, it will drill you down. So if I right click, I could just choose drill down. Or if I click the arrow, it puts me in a drill down mode. So it takes me to the next level as opposed to just interacting with the other visuals. Hope that makes sense. This is what we're calling a drill hierarchy. So if I do the right click and I say drill down, it takes me down in a drill hierarchy. The double arrows will take me just to the next level for everything. It's not taking me down in a specific sales rep, but it just takes me down to the next level across the board. And then again, I can go back up just by right clicking and saying drill up. I also have that ability to go to show as table. The show as table is going to take me to that same data at in a table format. Now, that's a drill down, like I said, with a drill hierarchy, but we also have the ability to do what we call a drill through. A drill through is going to take us from one page of the report to another page of the report and pass parameters over. Okay. You might be familiar with the term in J.D. Edwards of drill down, which is great, but drill down's only in financial reports and only if you've set it up, right? So you get some limitations there. A drill through we can set up on any page of the report, and we can go to any additional page. In our case, in our example, our drill through is going to take us from summary data into detailed data. So I'm going to go to Sales Detail Workshop. Just go ahead and click on that. And it brings me to a chart or a table of data that is just showing me additional information from what I was seeing on that analysis, the overall sales analysis page. To get back, I can just click the back button and it takes me back to the original page. So again, all I'm going to do, I'm going to go on Paul Smith. If I hover over Paul Smith, it pops up a tooltips box. In the tooltips, it gives me some information about what's going on with Paul Smith, tells me that his sales amount is $504,600. Okay, so now I'm going to right click. I'm going to go ahead and say drill through, go to that sales detail, and sure enough, there is that same number at the bottom, but I see broken out by detail. How did Paul Smith make that sales number? How many sales did he had? What were the different categories or the groups that those products were in? Now, cool thing in here, if I'm trying to do some ad hoc analysis, I go, you know what? I want to know what was his biggest sale. All I'm going to go do is go to that column. I'm going to click on the down arrow here, and it is going to sort that column. And I can say, wow, look at that sale. He had almost a $50,000 sale. That was pretty good for Paul. But what I might also start noticing is, wow, we had 3 big sales and then everything else was $500. What happened? You know, maybe his numbers look okay, but he's just being saved by 1 or 2 sales. So I can start doing some of this ad hoc analysis right here. Now I could link from here. Maybe I have another drill through that takes me to a different page, or it takes me over to see inventory. Okay, so we can build in as much depth on these reports as we need to for our users. The other thing I can do on this report is if I kind of hover here over the filter, it's going to show me those values that were passed in. I'm not changing those values in this case, but I do want to just see them so I know as a user, okay, I am limited to Paul Smith. It is looking just at period 9. It is looking at year 2019. And if I hit the back button, it takes me back. So this is, at a glance, our sales analysis report. We are going to build this report during our workshop today. We are also going to build this detailed workspace or report, the detailed sheet, and we're going to show the link between them. So that is our goal that we're going to do over the next hour and a half. At the end of this, I will show you through the magic of multiple monitors and multiple sessions how we would publish this out from our desktop out to our users. I'll show you how we could build this in a mobile app. How do we distribute it to our users so they can see it and start consuming this data? So that'll be kind of how we end the session. So hopefully you guys are all ready to get going here, and we are going to start our development. Now, typically, we recommend that all development is done using the Power BI desktop app. Now, because you guys are all remote and it's too hard to get you all with the app loaded on your machine and then access back into our data, we've gone ahead and set this up where we're doing the entire class using the Power BI service, or everything in the cloud, including our data set. So we're going to see a few things that might be a little bit different than what you would normally experience if you were going through this. But for right now, everything you've seen has been your end user experience. How would they consume data? Now we're going to look at how would we start building the data. This report that we've shared with you is a multi-page report. Down the pages, you can see that we actually have 14 pages. Each page that starts with an L is a lesson. We are going to go through 12 separate lessons during this workshop. At the end of each lesson, I will let you know, okay, we're going to start lesson 2, and what we're going to do. What you're going to see if you clicked on the page L2, this is where we ended from lesson 1. So if at any point you fall behind, you get distracted, you didn't get the button clicks right, or maybe you were interrupted, all you have to do is don't panic, just sit back, watch, catch back up, and at the next lesson, you can simply use one of these pages as your starting point to continue to go forward. So we will have these. It's available for each of you. What you're doing in your session, only you can see and only affects you. So you don't have to worry about, that you might mess this up for somebody else. We are happy to republish this out or share it with you again as well. So don't worry, there's nothing you can do that we can't fix or recover from. We have a backup copy of this report as well. So we are good to go. We're going to start with creating a new report. So what I would like everybody to do is we're going to go ahead and from your My Workspace sales analysis report, I'm looking at the breadcrumb across the top. We're going to go ahead and in the menu bar, there's an option, the little ellipsis with more options. Click on that. And we're going to go into edit mode. And edit mode is going to be how we make changes. So if we go into edit mode, you'll notice that your screen changes, the look of your screen is going to change quite a bit. So I'll let everybody get into the edit mode. The major change that you're going to see are your pages are no longer in the left-hand side in a column, but they are across the bottom as tabs. So each page of your report is now a tab across the bottom. This is very similar to the desktop app. And not even similar, it's exactly the same as what the desktop app looks like. Okay, so that is how you know when you're in edit mode. If you want to get out of edit mode, all you have to do is simply click the reading view up in your bar on the top towards the left, and it takes you back into that reading panel. So I'm going to go ahead and start by going back into edit mode. So click on the ellipsis, click on edit, and we're in edit mode. Like I said, looking at the sales analysis, we are going to start with a brand new blank page, and we are going to create this. This is what I like to think of as my inspiration report. What am I trying to get to? What do we hope it looks like in the end? Now, I will absolutely be going back to this page 2 or 3 times during this workshop to make sure I have things looking the same, looking the way they should. So don't feel bad if you want to click over there and kind of look and go, where was this supposed to be on the page, or about how big is this supposed to be? We're going to walk through all the formatting, we're going to walk through the look, but we'll go back and forth. This is what we hope to end with. So to begin, you can either start at L1, which is a totally blank page, or you can go ahead and click on the yellow plus. This is a new page icon. So this will give us a new page on our report. I'm going to do that. And you'll notice by default, it just calls it page 1. And that's going to work for me right now. And we're going to start to build a report from scratch. Now, because we started from, or I'm sorry, we're going to start to build this page from scratch. Because we started in a report, we are already attached to a data set. So the report is already attached to the data set out there. So we don't need to worry about that right now. We can tell that because when we're in edit mode, we saw that we had the tabs across the bottom, but we also have 3 panes on the right-hand side of the screen. The 3 panes are filters, visualizations, and fields. So this is where we're going to work with to build our page, okay, to build those visualizations out. The fields represent all the data that is currently in the data set. So what tables are we looking at here? Okay, what fields within a table? If you hover over like the sales table, or the sales option, I can see that it pops up the 4211. In our full-blown solution, every one of these tables that we see listed here will have that JD Edwards table over it whenever you hover. Same thing is true with the fields. So if I hover over actual ship date, it would show the JD Edwards table and the alias name for that. Okay.
Michelle?
Yes.
Hate to interrupt. A couple questions came in. I'm just getting caught up with them, and about just turning on the new view. So
Yes.
some people, I think, so yeah, I don't know if that was something that it might have been already done on yours, but people had to turn new view on, I think.
Oh, okay. So if your view was not looking the same as mine, let's see, don't save this. When you came in, I did not see the new view button on mine. So let me come in and look again. If your screen is not looking the same, maybe, and especially when you go into the edit mode, you'll notice these panels are black instead of light gray. There is an option up here to say new view. It's a little slider button right next to the search window. All you have to do is slide that over to new view, and your screen will look the same as mine. I must have turned new view on and not thought about that this morning, which is why I'm not seeing that. I'm sorry, guys.
Nope, you're perfect. Continue.
This is what happens when you try to be prepared as an instructor and you go in ahead of time and click around and make sure things are working. Yeah, goes back to that no good deed goes unpunished. I'm just gonna hold on to it today. So perfect. Okay, so we were talking about the fields. And like I said, we're in a subset of data that for some reason we're not seeing the alias name. Generally, with any of the solutions that we provide over the different ERP systems that we support, those are populated with the table and the field name so that your users have that kind of relationship back to the ERP system, unless it's something that we're calculating within the model. So Adam told you about we're taking data from the model, and that's where we kind of do our slicing and dicing, and we can make these really cool relationships that you can't do inside the ERP. So those would have more of the description that you would see that would pop up might actually be, what is that calculation? How did we come to that calculation? So very informative as we move forward. In this workshop, like, we are going to start building out some of these reports, and we will take fields from the fields pane, and we will add visualizations from the visualizations pane. And as we select a visualization, we'll define it using the fields. So that's kind of as we go. The final piece, and one that I won't focus on very often, is filters. So I don't focus on it a lot in this workshop, but very important to your users, because this is going to limit down the data that the report is returning. So we'll talk a little about filters at the very end, but I want to acknowledge that it's there. For most of you, when you came in, it was probably already an open window or an open pane. I go ahead and just shrink mine down so that I have more real estate for the canvas that I want to build on by clicking on the arrow in the top right corner. Another trick for navigating during this workshop, because I know it's going to be hard, you're going to try to follow me talking, watch my screen, and then try to do it on your screen. So I will try to talk slow. I will try to go through things a few times, but I'll also try to give you a few hints as we go as well. I like to resize my panes. So if you kind of hover over that line, you'll notice that your mouse is going to change, and you can drag and drop that fields pane to be a little bigger. The reason I like to do this is because as we expand a table and we see the fields, you'll notice that they indent. And some of those field names can get to be long. And so if this window is small, they just kind of cut off. And sometimes it can be hard to tell which one's which, like status code last, status code last. I don't know the difference. But if I make that field just a little bit bigger, I can see one is the code and one is the actual description. So there is actually a difference between the two fields. So you can do this by, again, just resizing the pane by using that drag and drop, and it will make enough space for you. Within the visualizations pane, we'll talk a little bit, again, just for vocabulary. We have the fields section in the visualization pane. This is going to be where we define the visualization. And we have the format icon, or the formatting section. So this is where we say, how do we want it to look? We can set a title in here. There may also, depending on the visualization that you're on, you may actually see a third option here, and that's the analysis option. So, and this is where within Power BI, we can add things like a max line or a min line. We can do some other things, but that is very specific to which visual you have currently selected. So just to get us going there. As we get going as well, and we talk a little bit about the fields. Now, I've mentioned the tables, I've mentioned the fields, I said how you can hover, but we'll also talk, each of these that we're looking at, these are basically our dimension fields. They just tell us information, customer and item branch, a region that they might be a part of. But we also have in here measures. The measures are amounts and something we're doing with the amount. So we organize these by having subfolders. So I have a subfolder called cost amount. And in here, I have some different time-based measures. Cost amount month to date, cost amount quarter to date, cost amount year to date. So we will be pulling these onto our report, both dimension fields and measures, okay, from the table and the subtable. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're going back to page 1. So I'm just going to click the plus in the bottom kind of right side of the screen. It's the yellow box. You're also welcome to start on L1 if you'd like, but I've got a blank canvas. We're going to get started by creating our first visualization. The first visualization is just going to be simply to see some data and get comfortable navigating around the system. So what we're going to do is we are going to pull into our table a couple different fields. We're going to pull in our customer name and the sales amount. So we'll have a dimension and an amount field. So all we're going to do is in the fields pane, let's go ahead and navigate down to the sales table, and you'll expand it. To expand the sales table, all you're going to do is click on the down arrow. And then I'm just going to scroll down here, and I can look, and we'll first find sales amount. So as I go, I'm looking at the subfolders, and here's sales amount. I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to take this sales amount field, and I'm just going to drag and drop it right onto my canvas. Doesn't even matter where we put it. And we see our first visual. It comes in, this is a bar chart, and it's just one value. Doesn't give us a whole lot, but we've done it. We want to add a little more definition to it. So let's go ahead and add customer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select the visual. So click somewhere in that visual, and you'll notice now that it has focus on it. It has a line around it and some darker boxes. We're going to put focus on the visual. In the visualizations pane, you will notice here under value, it says sales amount. When we just did a drag and drop, it went ahead and put that as the value for that visual. Let's go ahead next and let's add customer. So let's just scroll down here. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to go up to the customer table. That helps. So change tables, go to customer table. And let's go ahead and find the customer name field. And now I can just go ahead and I'm going to drag that over into the axis column. And now I see on my chart each of the customers going across the x-axis and their total sales going up the y-axis, or the value. So this was a very simple chart, just has our customer names and their total sales. Now I gave myself a little bit more room on that visual, so I kind of stuck that in there. All you have to do if you want to resize your visual is you can click on any of those darker black marks and you can drag and drop your visual to resize it. So as you're trying to look at the data, as you're trying to see what happens, feel free to resize those visuals as much as you need to. Okay. Or you can shrink them down if they're taking up too much real estate based on their default size. So we will be doing that a lot over the course of this workshop. Now, if I just hover over any of these values in my chart, you'll notice my tooltip pops up. So it's now showing me for that customer what was their total sales amount. We didn't have to do anything, that was all just by default. If I don't like this chart, or this isn't really telling me the story that I'm trying to convey, all I have to do is come over here to the visualizations tab. Again, focus on your visual. Click on it so you focus. And in the visualizations pane, simply click on a different type of visual. So maybe I want to see this as a stacked bar chart. or I want to see this as a line chart. We can go ahead and simply change it by just clicking on a different visual. So you can easily change those visuals around. So right now I'm looking at a pie chart. I could switch that over to a donut if I like, which is simply just a pie without the middle. And again, if I hover over any one of these, it's going to pop up and tell me what the sales amount was and then the percentage of the pie or of the donut. So I can see that custom brokers is 21.5% of our total sales. So it's a big customer. We want to make sure we keep them happy, right? So this is a much easier way to really visualize who are our big customers and how much of our business are they impacting. Versus if I was looking at this in a table format. So to look at this in a table, all I'm going to do is go down here to the little icon that looks like a grid or an Excel spreadsheet almost. And if I hover, it says table, I click on that, and now it shows me my data in a table format. For me, the picture is much easier to just quickly look at it and say, how diversified are we? Or do we have one customer who's really impacting the business? Sure, you can look at the numbers, but if I look at the numbers, I have to do some mental processing to come up with that. If I just look at a picture, I go, wow, we got a big green section. What's going on there? Who is that? Who's keeping them happy? Okay. So I always like the pictures. It is for new customers, this is a challenge for people because they are so used to those standard reports that they have with just the data layout. They're not ready to move, or they need to get help moving to how can a picture actually help them, and how is it going to impact how much faster they can make decisions and how they can change up the way they're doing business. So creating these visualizations, it's a lot of fun to do. It's fun to play around with and see, but it also is really helpful to users because they're so used to seeing it look like this that they're like, no, I just always need a table. I always need all my data to look just the same way. But really, it's not as helpful in my opinion. So from here, we can also look at some of the formatting options within this. So if I select the visual, I can come over here to formatting. Right now I'm in a table format. So go ahead, select your visual. Let's go back and put it back at the donut chart visual, just so we can see that. And we're gonna go to the format option. So click on the donut, click on the format. It's a little paint roller. And in here, there's a couple things we can change that are kind of fun about this. The first one I wanna look at is the title. The title by default is turned on, and you'll notice it's in the top left-hand corner of our visual. So this is where we can actually title what our visual is going to be, but we can also set things like the color. If I want to make it black, I just simply use the drop down and change the color. I might even change the size to make it 10, and I might make the font so that it's bold. So the title stands out on this visual. Now, all of those settings, those are my personal preference. You're welcome to either follow your corporate standards here or pick the things that you like right now. This is your sandbox. So pick your favorite font, pick your favorite size, your favorite color. Have fun with it. Now I sound like one of those bad cooking shows, don't I? Oh boy, it's going downhill. So the title here, this text, it is going to appear exactly how you type it. There isn't spell check, so you want to make sure that you're putting in effort here when you type to put in a valid title for your visualization. Excellent. The other one that I like to look at here in my pie chart is this detailed label. The detailed label is, the legend. Sorry, the legend here. I'm off. I'm totally off on this one. It is the legend section. I'm going to turn that on. So now I can see by my customers, I have my legend going across the top. As I look at those, if I want to turn it off or change it, I can reposition it to the bottom, or I can turn it off. Also on here, I have the title. The title is currently on. If I turn it off and on, that is just for the legend section of this chart. We also still have the ability, if we had drill downs, we could drill down on our pie chart. Okay. We don't currently have that built in here right now, but we will add some drill down options as we move forward with some of our other charts. So, excellent. Hopefully you guys are having some fun poking around in here with this pie chart. Let's go ahead and let's take this chart and let's bring it all back together. So let's take our visual. And this time we're going to make this back to a table. So let's go ahead and choose table. And let's add a couple other fields in here so that we can really see our data. So in the fields pane, let's go ahead and navigate over to the branch table. And this time, oh, I'm sorry, let's go to item branch, further down. We are going to take from the item branch table, let's go ahead and take the product group field, and let's add this to our table. To add a field to our table, we haven't done this yet. There's a couple different ways. I can just simply check the box next to the field, and it will add it in. Okay. It will always put it as the bottom item in our list. You'll notice that in the table, it makes it the last column in the table. So we just added the product group to our table. But we want that product group to be right after the customer. All we have to do is reorder the columns here in the values section. All I do is simply click on product group and drag it up above the sales amount, and that will reorder the columns for me. So now, as I'm looking at this, we have created a grouping that goes from customer to product group, and I'm looking at it in a table. If I jumped back over to that donut chart, we can see that we still have all of our same information. We've got customer name in our legend. We've got product group in our details. If I drag that up, it changes things around. Okay, so, but we can do some drill downs then. So if I take product group from details and put it back in legend, now I have a drill down on my donut that takes me down further. Okay. We could have just added it here in the donut. We could have just done it while we were here. I think it's easier to explain and to teach when I have the table up. Okay, that's why I took us over to the table. But I wanted to go back and show you on that donut how we can still do that drilling. And what's driving it is what we call the drill hierarchy. It's the order of the items here in the values section. Great. What we want to do now is we want to actually add some additional measures to our visual here. We want to tell a story. And what we want to do is we want to give it some more information, like what was our gross profit or the gross profit percent. So what we're going to do here is let's go ahead and I'm going to take my row and I want to add some additional measures. So we're going to navigate over in our fields pane to those additional measures. So what we're going to do is go down and make sure that we have in here our sales amount, and we can add the sales amount for the prior year. Again, just by simply either checking the box or by using a drag and drop and drag it over. Oops. So I'm going to go sales amount prior year, drag it in there. You do have to actually get it. You'll see a yellow bar when you have it in. So we want to get that in. And we can go ahead and we have our visualization. It is just a table here. It just gets us started and it puts us in a good spot as we start to move forward into our next lessons. So again, if for some reason you fell behind as we were going, you can go ahead and jump to the L2, or we'll just pick up from here and we're going to move forward by actually taking this table and turning it into meaningful analytics. So what else can we do with this data? What else can we look at with this data? And how can we interact with this data to give our users a better understanding of the story that's happening in our business? So in here, we're looking by customer at their total sales. But this is good information. The problem is it kind of leaves a lot of questions like, well, what year was this report run over? Or am I looking at a full year, or am I just looking at a period number? The user doesn't really know as they're looking at
Michelle,
this. Yes.
this is Adam here for a second. So I'm just saying a couple other questions as well, just a quick brief interruptions. I think some people weren't seeing the same data. I think the reports that were published might have had some filters there. I think in the next step for everybody, once we start filtering down on the year where Michelle's going, they should all come together. I think there was just, we'd added some filters that maybe didn't get to yours, Michelle. Sorry about that.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
but for those that are online, if you're seeing different data, the intent of the last exercise was really just changing charts, changing values, and understanding more ad hoc in nature. And so once we get to the next steps, the data should align. Feel free to just pose back questions if you're still seeing data that's dramatically off, but I think it should come back together here shortly. Thanks, Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. But we will get everybody on the same page as we step into these additional lessons. So right now, like Adam said, that first lesson was all about navigation, understanding vocabulary, and just kind of getting comfortable clicking around. As we start building here from lesson 2 through 12, each one of these is going to add a different component to our chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to start creating the different charts for our eventually our sales analysis page. So, or the different visuals, sorry. I'm off on my vocabulary today. I apologize for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this visual and we want to start being able to look at specific values. So what we want to first do is make sure that for our columns, we are looking at this data. We have it for our customer, but let's go ahead and look at our measures here, our amount columns. We have the sales amount and the sales amount prior year. If we want to see what they call time-based measures, we want to change these to see like our month to date, or our quarter to date, or our year to date. So all we're going to do is over in the fields pane, underneath sales amount, go down and add the sales amount month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. You'll notice now our chart or our table just got a little bit bigger there. To get rid of this generic sales amount, we could do that by just simply removing it. So see sales amount prior year, I want to remove that. To remove that column, I'm going to just simply click on the X to the right of that field, and it will remove it from my table. So I went to the subfolder, I went to sales amount folder, the subfolder, or I'm sorry, the sales table, the sales amount subfolder, and then I added my 3 time-based measures for month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. I then resized that visual just so I could see my data a little bit better. Now mine, it's just hard to see my data. That's just the resolution of my screen. I played with it a little bit earlier, but again, the values that you're seeing here are not near as important as just understanding the concepts of what we're trying to do. So hopefully you guys are able to see it good enough for now. So we have these time-based measures on this report. And as Adam mentioned, some of them are showing up, some of them aren't. It's just depending on what we're looking at. I'm going to go ahead. I'm also going to remove the product group from this visual. So to remove the product group, I'm just going to click on the X and it removes the product group. So now I'm just looking at one customer for Creekside Warehouse. Now, I happen to have that filtered down, and I'm wondering if
I think, Michelle,
what
I
I
think it might
did.
be, well, I think your filter's probably pulling a future year that doesn't
Okay.
have, so once you pull in 2019, so I'm just, if you,
Okay, so we'll get there then. Okay, so if I'm pulling the future year, my customer doesn't have the data. We'll
do you want me
get
to, I can override, if you want me to, right between exercises, I can override your report with the one that everybody else has loaded that might, we're doing at a break.
let's do that. I think it'll be a cleaner start to do
So
that. So why don't I am logged in, Adam, as
what's
this
your,
V workshop at biquicklaunch.com.
okay, let me go ahead and do that.
Can you
V
do that?
workshop, yep, I can do it right now. So
Excellent.
everybody wants to go fill up their coffees, go get some water, give us about 2
About
minutes.
2 minutes, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I think it'll answer a lot of questions. Okay, are we ready to start going? Everybody back? We'll pick up kind of where we left off here. I am going to start just so we're all in the same spot. I am just going to go ahead and click on the L2. This is going to be my new spot. Now remember I told you we could start from a scratch, we could start from a blank slate, or we could start from L2. If I don't want to change those tabs that Preferred Strategies gave to you, all I have to do is right click on the tab and say duplicate page. So I'm going to go ahead and choose duplicate page. And now I've got a duplicate of L2. So this should put us all in the same spot. I've got my customer number, I've got my sales amount, and I'm starting lesson 2. So we should all be at the nice same starting point there. If you want to restart, you're welcome to. But now everything you're looking at should be what I have on my screen as well. Okay, now we were talking about time-based measures. So I'm not too worried about this little hiccup. It just gives us an opportunity to review more, right? We can go through this one more time. We can all see our sales amounts and we can see them by the different time-based measures. So instead of just looking at the straight sales, expand sales amount, come down here, and we said we wanted to add the month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. So I'm just going to check the box. Oh, not that way. If I just randomly check a box, it just adds a new visual. To get rid of it, I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to hit the delete button. It goes away. Focus is everything in Power BI. So go ahead and focus on your visual, and then we're going to hit the sales amount month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. And we should see some data. I'm going to drag this down just a little bit here. So I'm looking at my data, not totally sure where this is coming from, but I'm going, okay, well, I can see month to date, quarter to date, year to date. What this is actually looking at is it looks back at the model and it says, what is the very last data or the last period of data that was loaded in? And that's what you're seeing here. The very last month that was loaded in, the very last quarter that was loaded in, or the year. So if December 31st of 2019 was the last data that we had loaded into that cube, that's what this would be showing us. It would be showing us the month of December and then our year total. But for a user, they're not exactly sure what all that means. They're going, well, I want to be able to change that around. I need to do something with it. So how can we start allowing the users to interact with these visuals? And that's what we're going to do in exercise 3. So all we wanted to do in exercise 2 was to build out our table here and to add these time-based measures to the table. In exercise 3, what we want to do is be able to allow the user to interact with this visual and to choose what is the time, what is the time component that we want to adjust over. So what we're going to do for those is we are going to use a feature called a slicer. Now a slicer is very similar to a filter in that it's going to allow us to limit data. But the difference between a slicer and a filter, I'm just going to jump over here to sales analysis, is a slicer is right here for the user to see. These across the top are called slicers. They can choose the year, they can choose the period they want. Okay? And all they do to select that period is they click on it. And all they do to select the year that they want to see is they can navigate over and they can find the year they want. Let me get up to a higher one. I can go to 2018, I click on it, and now I'm looking at June of 2018's data. And if I wanted to go to 2019, I just navigate over and I'm looking at 2019. It is similar from a user experience to what a filter does. Technically behind the scenes, it's different, but from a user experience, they're the same. I like the slicers because it's ease of use. I know that these are the 2 or 3 things that I need to change on this report so that I can see the data I want. We are going to add these to our report. So what we're going to do, go back to whatever page it was that you're building on. Mine's duplicate L12, it could be page 1. You might have just started at that lesson L2. We are going to start now on lesson 3. So if you got lost, you can start on L3 or continue on the page that you were on. We're going to add our slicer. To add a slicer, we're going to go to the visualizations pane. And we want to make sure, first, that nothing is selected in our canvas. So click anywhere in the white space. Just make sure you don't have those focus bars around your table. Click anywhere else to get focus off of it. Now let's select the slicer. The slicer is this little icon that looks like a filter. Has a little filter on it. And it puts a box in there. Now we're going to tell it, what do we want to filter on? Okay, what do we want this slicer to be used for? The first one we're going to create is going to be based on year. So in the fields pane, we're going to define this slicer. In the fields pane, we're going to navigate down to the calendar table and expand the calendar table. And then we're just going to navigate in there to the year field. And I'm going to drag that year field over into the visualizations pane. And now I see a list of years. So now my user can simply just click on the year that they want, and you'll notice your data up top immediately is changing with that slicer. All the connections, everything about how that slicer works with that visualization is already built in. A lot of bang for your buck here. Are you guys excited? I'm hoping you are. So we've got our year slicer. So if we want, like I said, change the year just by clicking on the box. This is our drop-down list slicer that we can do. But we want to format our slicer. We want to make it a horizontal list. Why do we want to do that? Mostly because it was in the inspiration report, but there just might be times where you like to see things going across. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to format the slicer. In the visualizations pane, click on the formatting icon. So it's the little roller paintbrush. And in here, we're going to go to the general section. It's the very top section of the formatting option. And there is an option in here called orientation. We're going to change this from vertical to horizontal. And now what you're going to see are those buttons. So now for the user to select which one they want, they simply just click on one of the buttons. It does the same thing as checking that box that we saw earlier. We can resize this window to make it smaller or bigger. You'll notice as you make it smaller, you're going to get some arrows so you can scroll through your different options. If they can't all fit, you'll get arrows going one way or the other so you can roll through the options there. So now we've added our first slicer, the slicer for year. Next, we want to add a slicer for period. So how can my user control the period they're looking at? To add a second slicer, we could just start over and hit, take focus off and hit slicer again and go. Or if we don't want to have to go through all that formatting that we just did by changing it from a vertical to a horizontal, what we can do is just copy the existing slicer. So if I highlight the slicer that I have and I use Control C on my keyboard and Control V. Control C for copy, Control V for paste. I don't know why V is in Victor, but somebody out there might have that answer for us, but that will do it. You'll notice for a moment, it's going to just show us what the value was that we had selected in the year slicer. Don't get too worried about that right now. What we want to do now is actually change up the second slicer so it's based on period. So all we're going to do is in the field, we're going to take the period num option from our fields pane, and we're going to drag that over into the slicer field. And you can only have a slicer based on one item, so you might actually first have to delete the year and then add the period num. Gets picky about that. Now I like to readjust this so my users don't have to scroll between the periods. They just see all 12 periods. Scrolling between the years is fine, but the periods I like to go ahead and just have it display all of those. So now if I choose period 9, I know that this month to date is showing me September of 2019. And this is showing me quarter 3, the quarter to date. And this is showing me the year to date through September 30th. And that is our second slicer. So we've now added a table. We've added 2 slicers, which will help our users doing basically their filtering on this report. How are they going to interact with this report? How can they make it more dynamic without having to create multiple copies of this report? And in order to change it, they're just clicking on the option they want. Now we have in here the slicers to give us that month to date, the quarter to date, the year to date. But what if our user said, well, I actually want to see this, but I want to be able to choose period and year, but I don't want 3 static columns or 4 static columns. I just want one column, and I want to be able to tell the report, should that be month to date, or should that be quarter to date? Could that be year to date? So the user wants to be able to interact with this and tell us which column to show. We have a way to do that. And we have this, I like to call them like a dynamic measure here, a dynamic time-based measure. And that is a measure that's called selected value. So what we're going to do is in our table, highlight your table visual, we're going to add another time-based measure. As you scroll down to the sales table in the sales amount subfolder, there is an option here called sales amount selected. Let's go ahead and add that to the report now. And you'll notice that this is going to add a column to your table, but it's blank. And that's because we haven't actually told it what quote unquote selected value do I want in there. Do I want it month to date? Do I want it quarter to date? Or do I want it year to date? So we can actually add another slicer that allows the user to choose what they want that to be. And this makes it really dynamic. So Let's go ahead, let's take our year slicer again, and let's copy it, and let's paste it. So Control C, Control V. And then this time on the new slicer, let's remove year. And we're going to put in the value that allows us to change this column. Now, this value is actually located towards the bottom of your fields list, and it's in a table called Selected Time Calc Filter. And we are going to, there's only two options in that table. We're going to take the one that says Selected Time Calc ABBR, abbreviated, I think. So this is going to give us the list. So I'm just going to turn that on. And now I can see month to date, quarter to date, year to date. If I select any one of those, it will then populate my selected column with the value that I chose in my slicer. This allows the user to have a dynamic report or a more dynamic report. Excellent. So let's clean up our report just a little bit, and let's make this something that maybe a user might really want, right? We know that they don't want to see all these fields. So to get rid of the fields, what are we going to do? Step one, put focus on your visual. Step two, remove the fields you don't want from the values list by simply clicking the X. Let's remove month to date, quarter to date, year to date, and the sales amount. So we're back to just two values, the customer name and the selected amount, or sales amount selected. Excellent. Give you guys a moment to catch up. Now what I want to add to my report. I want this to be dynamic. Like imagine if I was standing in front of you, I'm doing my little dance here, and I'm doing, what do they call that? The little worm with my arms. I'm actually doing it here at my desk. Glad I don't have a camera on me because it looks really bad. But it is fun. We want this to be dynamic. We want users to be able to see. I select my item. I want to see, where was I last year? It's always what accountants want to know. So what we're going to do is go back up in our fields list, and underneath that sales amount subfolder where we selected sales amount selected, right underneath it, the next one down, sales amount selected prior year. Who would have thought? It's right there. Just turn it on by checking the box. And now I'm looking at this year compared to last year. If I want to see it from month to date, I just change the slicer. Where was I this period last year to last year? Or this period this year to this period last year? I don't have to have two separate reports, two separate visuals. Okay. Less maintenance, more dynamic. Now we also have the ability in here on my, if I go back and focus on my visual, I've got the selected amount, I've got the selected prior year, but also if I look on here, I have the sales amount versus the prior year and the sales amount versus, or I'm sorry, I want sales amount selected, sales amount versus prior year, sales amount versus prior year percent. That's fine. Or I have sales amount versus prior year selected down below. So this makes it more dynamic. Let's go ahead and choose those. So now whenever I've got those four items, if I change up my slicers, my table will dynamically update. So we just created a phenomenal report that most users would find helpful. Now we want to save this. So you can just come up on the right-hand side, right above where it says fields, and hit save this report. Once you hit save, it just saves right over what you had. So we've saved our progress up to this point. Excellent. Now we want to start organizing this just a little bit. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do that next. So hopefully you guys have all had success building your visual and then creating some slicers so we can interact with what data we're looking at. Let's play with the layout just a little bit. First of all, on any good report or any good page, we always need to have a title. So let's go ahead and add a title to this page. So this is going to be our sales analysis page. All we're going to do is right in the top center, let's go ahead and click on text box. And we can type in here, sales analysis. Now, I can play with the font here as I have it highlighted. You'll notice that your formatting bar pops up, and I can change this to be whatever I want. So I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make the size on this just a little bit larger so I can see it. I'm going to go ahead and make it 20. I can resize it if I want. I can even move it. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so I like my titles in the top left or the upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to just click in there as soon as my mouse decides to start playing with me. As soon as I get to like a little arrow, don't know why it won't. I don't want to resize. I want to move. There we go. Then I can just drag it to where I want it on my page. So if you get over like the thin line, it will allow you to move it. So if you hover and you're over one of those thicker ones, it allows you to resize. If you get over the thin line on the outside, it'll allow you to move it. So I'm going to go ahead and move my sales analysis title up to the top left-hand corner. And then I want to move my slicers around. So I'm going to go ahead and take my slicer for the selected amount. And I'm going to shrink that down a little bit for the size. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag that up and put that right next to the title. And then I'm going to take the year and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller and put it at the top of my report. And just do your best as you're trying to get it to look good here. I'm going to make it not quite so wide. I want all my periods to show. Like I said, I don't care if they scroll through the years, but I want all my periods to show. So I'm going to make sure I have enough room to get the periods going across the top. And that's just personal preference here. Nothing that says you have to. Now in here, I'm just kind of dragging and dropping to get this right. If you are really OCD, you have plenty of time to play after the workshop to clean this all up. If you highlight any of your visuals and you go to the formatting, you actually have an option in here in the formatting where you can set the exact quadrants, the X and Y position of where this is at. So you could get everything lined up the way you wanted it. If you would consider yourself a report developer that would be doing this all the time with all your different areas, you would actually be using the desktop application, not the web. And in there, you would have the ability to multi-select the items. I can kind of do it here. And you can do some alignment. So just like you can in Word or PowerPoint, you have that same function in Power BI desktop application. So there is definitely something here for everybody, including those of us that are a little bit OCD. Okay. But we're not going to spend much more time on that than we already have, because it just I can spend hours in here just formatting things to make them look really pretty. So, I'm going to drag down my table just a little bit just to give myself some more room. Now we could also do some things again if we wanted it to look a little cleaner or different. We could add a line in here. Just rotate that line. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. And now I've got a line that, play with my sizing on these things. But I could, put kind of a border on my title up here. So there's a lot of stuff you can do to make these reports have a different look or feel, definitely to have them match any sort of corporate standard that you might have going on. So again, don't want to spend too much time on that or dwell on that, but want to make sure that you guys get a chance to look at some of those different options. Now, we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward. So let's save your changes up to this point. And we have completed now up through lesson 4 of building a visualization, creating our slicers, and now formatting it to look a little bit more like something that our users would want to interact with when they're on here. So we have this nice interactive measure. We've got slicers that are going to let them get to their data. Now what we want to do is we want to actually take this and transform it into visualizations that really tell stories through pictures. So what is the important information that they're trying to look at or they're trying to get when they're using this page? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to start by just making a copy of our current visual. So I'm just going to select the visual, Control C, Control V. I'm going to drag it to where I have some space. Again, I like to resize because it bothers me when things are overlapping each other, but you don't have to. And we are going to change this second visual. We're going to create a waterfall visualization. So waterfall charts are great for analyzing variances to help us understand the cumulative effect of something and show us positive and negative values. So kind of fun to use a waterfall chart. It's not something I do every day, but definitely when I've seen them used, they're very effective. So let's go ahead and just start with one of those. So now that we have our table here, we're going to go ahead and change it to a waterfall chart. But before we change it, we want to make sure we have the right fields. So for our waterfall chart, we're going to change our values. So instead of basing this one on customer, we're going to base it on sales rep. So I want to see for each sales rep, did they go up or down in their sales? So what we're going to do is navigate here and we're going to go to the customer table. So I'm just going to scroll up, expand customer, and I'm going to find the sales rep field. And I'm going to drag and drop that right over above the customer name field. So this is actually going to create for us now a drill hierarchy that goes from sales rep down to customer. Now to switch our table over to a waterfall chart, all we have to do in that visualizations pane is to select the waterfall chart. So I'm just going to find that visual. And in my case, it happens to be the third one down, but it's going to vary based on how the width of your columns. So it is just kind of hover over them and you can kind of see the icon. Excellent. So hopefully everybody's found the waterfall chart. Now, if yours looks as bad as mine, that is because of the way it rendered the different values into the different sections of a waterfall chart. So what we want to do is we want to take where we see breakdown and it's breaking it down by customer name. We don't want that. We're going to take that out. So go ahead and just drag customer name back up to the first section for category, right underneath sales rep. So we still have it in our waterfall chart, or in our drill down, the hierarchy, but we're not going to see a breakdown by that. So every customer, we're not restarting over. In the y-axis, what we want to see here is we actually want to see how did we do this year compared to last year. So what we want in here is not the sales amount selected, but I want to see the sales amount versus the prior year selected. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, I told you that sometimes these cut off, so I just resize my column by clicking on that arrow. I'm going to pull sales amount selected down to tooltips, and I'm going to pull sales amount selected, or sales amount versus PY selected, up into the y-axis. So I'll give you just a moment to do that. You're going to swap out the y-axis so that it's the sales amount versus prior year selected. And now what I'm seeing is for each one of my sales reps, are they positive or negative versus their sales number from last year? Excellent. Hopefully you guys are having fun with this. Now, again, that tooltips, what we have listed here is what they're going to see if they hover over any of the sales reps. And they're going to see it in the order you have it listed there. So we're going to see who our sales rep is. We're seeing the amount of the difference, and then we're seeing all of our tooltip options. Now, in our visual, we also are looking, this happened to just render nicely for us, but if we click on the little ellipsis on this visual, if you go to sort by, it says which item are we sorting by? We want to make sure in that sort by that we actually sort by the sales amount versus prior year selected. Sometimes because we had that the sales amount in the y-axis, it sorts funny. So we want to clean that up so that it sorts by the right way. And then the other option that you might have is the sort ascending or descending. So we're going to just make sure that that is also set to sort descending. Again, if I go to my period 12 of 2019 for year to date, excellent. Hopefully you all had some success in creating your first waterfall chart. We've changed our sort order, so it's sorting descending. Now, a couple other things we want to do before we are done. You'll notice in here that whether it's positive or negative, the waterfall chart automatically changes the color. We don't have to do anything for that. So that's nice. Again, visually, you can look and see that Jason Lee is down while Robert O'Neill is up. Okay. We have the drill down if we want to. Just by doing that right click in the drill down, we're going to go from the sales rep, Robert O'Neill, down to his customers. I can right click and drill back up to the visualization. All of that's just built in there. We're not doing any of it. But before you finish, you always want to go over to your formatting on your visual, and you want to set up some of your formatting options. So we're going to go down here to the title, and let's change our title. The title for this visual is going to be the sales variance by sales rep. So sales variance by sales rep. I like to make my font black. Again, I have kind of my standards that I always do. I make the size 10 and I make it bold. You probably have some standards that have been set out by your marketing department that you need to follow as well, but I tend to do that. Now, once I have it set, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now we have completed lesson 5. Let's go ahead and start lesson 6, which is our scatter chart. Okay. So in our scatter chart, what we're going to do is we're just going to take the waterfall chart as our base, and we're going to copy that. The scatter chart is going to be going to show us how we're doing with our gross profit. Okay. So take the waterfall chart, copy it, paste it. I'm going to just move it over so that one does not affect the other here. And now, instead of looking at a sales amount, what I'm going to start looking at here, oh, I think I have an extra chart on my report. We're not going to look at this by sales rep, but we're going to start looking at this scatter chart more by customer. So we're going to change this visualization a little bit so that we're looking at our sales amount selected, but we're going to look at the growth compared to the gross profit. So let's go ahead and update some of our fields here. So with your visualization selected, let's change the x-axis, or first we have to change the type of chart. So let's change it to a scatter chart. So hit the scatter option. It's little dots all over the place, kind of fun. And we're going to change the x-axis. So we're going to just go ahead and swap that out with the sales amount selected. And on the y-axis, this time we're going to add the gross profit percent selected. So we're going to have to navigate to a new folder over here. So underneath your sales folder, there is a subfolder called gross profit. And in gross profit, if you expand that subfolder and scroll down, you're going to see a gross profit percent selected. Let's go ahead and add that to the y-axis. When I know where I want it to go, I tend to like to do the drag and drop myself. And then it goes exactly where I want it. So now I have my X and Y axis set, but I want to control what's the size of these dots. Okay. So who am I looking at? So to control the size of the dots, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add an option in here for size. And we're going to go ahead and put in the gross profit selected. So go ahead and find gross profit selected, not the percent, but just the gross profit, and add that to the size. And now it will change the size of those dots. Now to change the scatter chart so that I'm not analyzing sales reps, but I'm actually analyzing the customers, what I want to do is change up my order here. So I'm going to take and remove the sales rep field from the details section. So I'm going to go ahead and remove sales rep. And now I just have my customer name, but I'm going to go ahead. I still want to have a hierarchy here. So I want to add the channel as part of the legend. So we're going to go over. The channel is in the customer table. So we're going to scroll up to customer. We're going to find our legend, or I mean our channel. And we're going to drag that over to the legend section. So in details, you have customer name. In legend, you have channel. The x-axis is the sales amount selected. The y-axis is the gross profit percent selected. And the size is gross profit selected. So in order to have a drill hierarchy on the report, we need to have more items listed here in the details section. So what we want to do is from the item branch table, we're going to add a couple items in here. So go ahead and navigate to item branch, and we're going to add our product group and our product subgroup. So I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to find product group and put that in the details section. And then I'm going to find product subgroup and add that to the details section. Now I'm starting to have, I have a drill hierarchy established on my report that's going to, right now it's going from customer to product group to product subgroup. Now let's do a little bit with the formatting. Okay, how is this going to look? Now some of the stuff we don't have to set, like the font for the title. Since we copied it, that was retained. But we are going to want to do things like change the title. So the other thing we can do with this scatter chart is we're going to want to turn on the category labels. So in the visualizations pane underneath the formatting ribbon, we're going to go ahead, we're going to find the section for category labels, and we're just going to turn it on. And all we have to do is click on that little bar, and it will toggle it on. And now you'll see that each one of our customers is actually named by their dot. So those are our category labels. Again, we're going to go to the title section now, and we're going to change the title of this. And what we want our title for this visual to be is going to be sales and gross profit % by customer. Okay. So the title, sales and gross profit % by customer. I did lie, I told you it didn't have spell checking. It has spell checking in the sense that it's going to tell you you're wrong. But I will not correct it for you. Great. And now what we want to do is we want to make sure to save our report. So we've now created our 3 visuals. In exercise 7, we're going to add another visual. This time we're going to add a stacked bar chart. The stacked bar chart is used to show comparisons between categories of data. It's going to help us to break down and compare the parts as a whole. So all we're going to do is we're going to take our visual here. I'm going to take this scatter chart and I'm going to copy and paste it and then drag it to its own section, own space on the canvas here. And then we'll go ahead and start making changes. The first thing we want to change is the type of visual. So select your scatter chart, the one that you just copied, and let's change this to a stacked bar chart. So as you hover over, it's going to be the very first option. So select stacked bar chart. We're going to update this chart so we have the right dimensions in here, because what we want, we're going to go ahead and put in here, we're going to remove customer from the axis, customer name. So let's go ahead and take that out. And all we're going to want in our axis name is going to be the product and the product group. In the legend, we're going to go ahead and add an item in here. We're going to add region because we want to see this broken down by region. Remember before, whenever we were looking at this, we saw like the west, the east, the central. So let's add region. Region is actually located in the customer table. So let's go ahead and navigate up to the customer table. And we're going to find our region, and we're just going to drag and drop that into the legend field. Maybe. I think it might not be allowing me because of my value here. Let's get our right values in here. We're going to take the sales amount. Let's move that down to the tooltips. We don't want that. And we're going to take the gross profit % selected and also move it down into the tooltips. I'm going to put it all the way at the bottom if you'd like. Now let's go ahead and try to move region there to our legend. So we had too many dimensions going on in there for the value. But now that we've got that cleaned up, so we have a single value, which is just gross profit selected, we are able to put region in the legend field. So it's just a matter of making sure that it could render what the value was. Now we're going to add a little bit of formatting to our chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here with our chart selected, go to formatting. And in this select data labels, we're going to make sure that that is turned on. And you'll see it puts our values in there. Next, we're going to go to our title, and we're going to change the title of this visual And the title of this visual is going to be Gross Profit by Product Group and Region. So I'll give you just a second to type that. Excellent. And now you can see our visuals created as we select any of those items. So if I click on mobile and I click on West, you're going to notice that all your other visuals are changing because they're all interconnected. They all have a relationship already built. To get out of that, just click on the white space anywhere in your visual. Make sure to hit save, and we've now completed exercise 7 or lesson 7 for this workshop. Now I know we're getting a little bit close on time. It looks like I have about 14 minutes. So we'll see how I can do. I know we went a little bit long. Like Adam said, we are recording this. The recording will be available. So if for any reason you need to drop off, just keep track of about what lesson you were at, and you can jump right back into the recording and fast forward up to that lesson. So the next thing we want to work with on our report is KPIs or key performance indicators. So we just want to look at a quick value and know, are we up or are we down from where we thought we would be? So this is a great way of comparing to measure that, are you meeting your goal or are you not? So pretty quick and easy. In order to do this, we need to make a little bit more room on our canvas. So all we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this table. So I'm going to select the table and I'm going to hit delete, and it's gone. And we're going to add a new KPI visualization or card to our page here. So I'm going to click in the white space. I'm going to come over under the visualizations, and I'm going to select the KPI visualization. It's a little card with an up and down arrow on it. Pretty simple. And now we're just going to define, what do we want this card to be? So we're going to put in here our indicator, which is, what are we trying to measure? What number did we want to look at? We want to look at the sales amount selected. So in our fields list, let's scroll down. Let's find that sales amount selected. And I'm just going to drag and drop that over as an indicator. And then what am I comparing it against? What's my target? And that's going to be the sales amount selected for the prior year. So I'm going to take that one right below it, and I'm just going to drag that right down to the target. So I'm comparing my current sales amount to the prior year. And then at what dimension am I doing that? I'm going to do that on a year basis. So go all the way back up to your calendar table towards the top. You're going to find the year field, and you're going to drag that into the trend axis. And now you can see your card. I'm going to resize that. It does not need to be that big. That shows me my sales for the year versus last year. And it shows the color is indicated, am I up or am I down based on that goal? And it looks like I'm up 13% based on December 2019 year to date. If I wanted to change it to September, we could do that. If you were comparing this against the visual that we had sent out, okay, you might want to go to September. I like December. I'm going to stick with my year to date. It just gives me some nice good numbers to look at. I have numbers everywhere. Excellent. So we have our KPI on the report now. We've resized it so it's a little bit smaller. Let's go ahead and do some of the formatting. Select your KPI and go to your format ribbon or your format icon. Let's go ahead and change the title. So on the title, we're going to just call this sales versus prior year. And we're going to keep it short and sweet because it's just a card. I'm also going to change the look of that. Now, the reason I have to set all that here on this KPI was because I didn't copy a visualization to create this. Remember, I created it from scratch. So now I do have to do that extra little bit of formatting on this visualization so that I get everything to look uniform. I'm going to select the color, the font, the size, go ahead and put all those in. And that's our first KPI. We're going to create another KPI, but this KPI is going to be about our gross profit percent. So what we're going to do is go ahead and I'm just going to take that first one and copy it and paste it so I don't have to redo everything. And we're just going to go back over to the visualizations pane and change out our columns. So for our indicator, what do we want to actually look at? We are going to look at or analyze the gross profit percent. So let's go ahead and scroll down to our sales table and find our gross profit percent selected. And let's go ahead and put that as the indicator. This one is nice. So once you drag it over, since you can only have one, it just replaces whatever was in there before. I still want to do it on an annual basis, so I'm going to leave year. But what am I going to compare it against? I'm going to compare it against the gross profit selected prior year. Excellent. Now you do have to remove that sales amount selected prior year from the target goals. It does allow you to have more than one item listed in the target. So you will need to remove that just by clicking on the X. This one we actually went down. So notice that the color of the KPI is actually red. The only thing we have to change in our formatting is going to be the title. So let's go ahead and go over to the title and we're going to change the text here to be our gross profit percent versus prior year. Great. And we're going to save that. And that completes exercise 8. Exercise 9 is actually about, we get into adding like images to your report. That is really a function that's only available on the desktop. So I'm going to skip exercise 9 for right now, or lesson 9. And we're just going to jump up to lesson 10, where we're going to create the next type of area. So we're not going to look at adding a logo or adding an image to the report. That would be something we would do in the desktop. In our sample reports, typically we see that down here. We put those as the footer of the report. We'll put a company logo listed there, and we'll put a date time stamp in a footer of the report. But for time issues, and just again, because of which system we're on, when you do it on the surface in the web, we don't have that ability. So we're just going to move past that. Let's go ahead and let's work with exercise 10. So if you want to go ahead and start and pick back up, you can click on L9 or just keep going from the report that you're on. And we're going to create our next visual here. We're going to create an area chart. So I want to change up my layout just a little bit so I have some room for it. I'm going to move my waterfall chart up here on the top line and squeeze it down just a little bit so it fits. And then I'm going to put my scatter chart over here in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to squeeze him down just a little bit. And then I'm going to add my final visualization, which is the area chart. I also like to think of area charts as a great way to show trends, like how have we done over the last 12 months. So this is going to be a chart that needs a little bit more real estate on your screen. Again, which is why I kind of arranged my screen so I had plenty of room for that. We're going to go ahead and add this area chart from scratch. So we're not going to copy an existing one. All we're going to do is click on the white space and we're going to select the area chart visualization. So it's right after the little squiggly line icon on your visualizations pane. But it looks kind of, I don't know, I kind of think it looks like mountain range to me a little bit. Maybe it's because I'm from Colorado. I think about that. I'm going to drag this across and we have our new visualization, which is going to be our area chart. Now I went ahead and resized that visualization just kind of without thinking about it. So you're welcome to do that. Now we're going to put on here what is going to be our X and our X and Y axis here. So in the axis, we're going to put in what do we want going across on the X axis. I told you it was a trend chart. Typically, I see months. So we're just going to go up here in our calendar table, and we're going to find the period. You can either do period num or period description short. That would actually put the names going across for the axis. And then in the legend, we're going to go ahead and look at this by channel. So the channel again is in the customer table. Let's find channel and put that in the legend. And then for the value, what do we want to see? What are we looking at? What do we want to see the trend? We're going to look at the sales amount versus the prior year. So how are we doing over last year? So let's scroll down to our sales table and let's find that sales amount. We want sales amount versus prior year selected. We're going to drag that over to the values. Awesome. So now we have created our area chart. The only part that's kind of a bummer about this is the area chart doesn't really get its full effect because we have it narrowed down based on the slicers up on the top of the report. I'm only looking at period 12. If I change this to September, the report would only be showing period 9. And so now you see your area chart, you only see one row there of September. So remember, by default, everything is tied back up to the slicers on this page. In this case, for this visual, in this visual only, I don't want it to be affected by the period slicer. I want to see all 12 periods in this visual. So what we're going to do is select the period slicer. Okay, make sure you have focus around it. And then we're going to go up on the very top and we're going to choose this option called visual interactions. How does this visual interact with everything else on the page? So go ahead and turn it on. And then you're going to come down here to our area chart and you'll notice everything now has a little filter or a little Ghostbuster sign. Click on the Ghostbuster sign. It means none. I don't want these guys to interact at all. Just on that one visual. So now, and then what we're going to do is go back up to visual interactions and turn it back off. Okay, we don't need to make any more edits. Now what this means is it doesn't matter which period your user selects, that area chart will always show all 12 periods. That slicer no longer affects that visual. It's called a visual interaction. I've got 2 minutes and we'll get through this exercise. So if you can stick in here for the 2 minutes, we'll go ahead and format our area chart. So let's go ahead and go to formatting. First thing we want to do is we want to turn on the data labels. So right here in the section for data labels, just go ahead and toggle that on. Now under the shapes section, this is where it gets kind of fun. What we're going to do here is we're going to turn this on so that we actually see the markers. And it shows us each period and where we hit. Again, trying to make this so that it looks similar to what people are used to seeing with an area chart. In the title section, we already have the title turned on, but let's give it a meaningful title. So let's go ahead and just call this sales variance by period and channel. Perfect. Now I'm going to fix my font and my color. You do not have to. Nobody's going back and grading these after we're done, so but I'm going to make sure those look consistent here. Excellent. And now that I've got my area chart complete, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It is 1 o'clock. We have now created our first sales analysis summary page. So I thank everybody who was able to attend and stick in here to create this first page. The next thing we're going to do is to create our sales detail and create a drill through between those two pages. Then we'll look at a little bit about end user presentation. We'll look at creating the mobile layout and publishing this report out to a workspace. So those are probably the last two things. We probably about 15 more minutes. So if you're able to hang in for about the last 15 minutes, I appreciate it. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that made this run long. But thank you for hanging in there. If you do need to drop off, there will be a recording available. Or if you've gotten lost since I started talking faster, watching my time, you're also welcome to go back to that recording. So great. We're going to go ahead. Let's pick up. We are going to start on with exercise 11. We're going to create a drill through page. So we've created the sales analysis. I think mine looks pretty dang similar to our inspiration page here. Not exact, but it's good. It's close. But what I want to do is I want to start building this so it has all the same functionality. If I'm looking at my data and I can go ahead, I can do that drill down. I can go to the next link based on that hierarchy. But if I want to go see the detail that's behind this, what we can do is we can actually create another page. There's a couple ways to create that other page. I could just start from scratch if I wanted. But what I'm going to actually do is just duplicate this page. And that's because I want to keep the header section looking the same. I want to have those consistent, the consistent slicers on there so that I see that. What I'm going to do is just right click and I'm going to say duplicate page. And I'm going to call this one, to rename it, I'm going to right click and choose rename page. And I'm just going to call this detail page. Now think back in here to where we started when we created this and what we had on our report. On the page, this detail page, first thing we want to do, let's go ahead and let's just change our title. So I'm just going to click in this text box and I'm just going to call this sales detail. But now we get to get rid of everything that we don't need on this report. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start deleting out all those visuals that we just spent the last hour and a half creating. So under the sales PY, just go ahead and delete those. I'm just selecting it and hitting the delete on my keyboard. I am going to, and we're going to go back to where we started from. So what we want ultimately is just a table. So if I looked at our inspiration report for sales detail, it is just our chart here, or a table, and this is what we want to create. So we can, there's some debate there. Is it easier to start from scratch? I think so. So I'm going to delete everything out, and we're going to start defining that data table. So let's go ahead and start adding in the fields that we need. So starting at the very top, underneath the customer table, over in the fields pane in the customer table, let's start adding our fields. So the first one we're going to have is customer name. And I'm just checking the boxes as I go. It's the fastest way to do this. And I'm going to add channel. Next, I'm going to add sales rep. They are in alphabetical order. And then from there, we want to start adding some information about what it was that they purchased. So now I know who it was. Now I want to know what. So we are going to go ahead and navigate down to the item branch. And in the item branch, I'm going to choose the product group and the product. And then we want to know a little bit of information about what it was that they purchased. So let's go down to the sales table and let's select our values from here. So in the sales table, Let's go ahead and select in here the order number, the order date, the order type, and then what exactly do we want to see. So we need a couple measures in here. We're just going to scroll up and we're going to go to the quantity ordered. And I'm going to choose quantity ordered selected. Remember, we still have those slicers on this report, so the selected values will still work. And then for the sales amount, we want the sales amount selected. So now based on my slicer, I can see that detail of who it was, the channel, the sales rep, the product group. And now we've created our detail table. Now, if we need to, if it's hard to see this, we can always go in on the formatting icon. We can change the way this looks. So if I go to my column headers, I can make this font a little bit bigger. I could go up to 12. You guys know your user community. You know how their eyes work. If you need the text to be a little bigger, that can be. Okay, so I made my text 12. I could also go in here on the values section, and I could make this a little larger too. Again, this is a lot of detail in a chart, so making that font a little bigger, a little easier to read, might be very helpful to them. I can resize those columns here. I'm just dragging them a little bit bigger so they can see it. And then I can resize the visual. I'm going to go ahead and resize this chart or this table here to take up the entire page. There's not going to be anything else on it. You'll notice you always have your total row at the bottom, regardless of how big the visual is. Okay? But always put the total at the bottom for that. So I've gone ahead now and I have created my detail page. Now what I want to do is I want to say, well, what needs to get passed in if a user's coming to this page? So we're going to create over here in our visualizations pane, and I'm going to select my visual here, we're going to pass in what they call drill through options. So if a user comes from a report, if that value appears on the page they're coming from, it will pass it into this page and it will appear as if it's a filter value. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding these in, and we'll go ahead, and again, I'm going to start at the top as I do this. So from the customer table, we want to pass in as much as we can so that it gives the most of like a drill down effect on our data, or the drill in. So from the customer table, we're going to take that customer name, and I'm just going to drag and drop that down here into the add as a drill through. And I'm going to shrink it up by clicking on the little arrow at the top. Okay, I could be padding it with exact values, but we're not going to do that right now. Then I'm going to come down and I'm going to find, or I'm going to take the channel and put the channel next. Now the order that they're in here is not really important. It's going to just fill them in as it comes in. I'm doing them in order just that they're in alphabetical order, because it's easier as you guys are going through your table trying to follow me. I'm going to take region from the customer table and add that as the third item. Let's go ahead and find region as you're scrolling down. And then finally from the customer table, we're going to add sales rep. And again, as you scroll down, just close it up by hitting that little arrow. Next, we're going to go to add the product group and the product fields. Remember, those are in the item branch table. So let's go ahead and scroll down to the item branch, and let's drag over the product group and the product. I'm shrinking these up every time just so you can see them. It does not make a difference if they're opened or closed. And then that will be the last of our drill throughs. Now, once we added that first drill through section, it now knows that we're going to drill into this. It added up in the top left corner a little back button. So Power BI put the back button up here right by our title. We want to go ahead and just format this so people can see it. So I'm going to take the title. I don't want them sitting on top of each other. I'm going to move the title slightly over for this page. And then I'm going to take that back button and I'm going to do a little bit of formatting on it. So select the little round icon there. And let's go ahead and do some of the formatting. So let's go over to the visualizations pane. You'll notice that we don't have any pictures or any type of visualization here, just the formatting section. So let's click on the icon. And this is saying what type of icon is it? Let's change this so that the line color is blue. Blue instantly gives users that feeling that they need to click on this to have an action take place. So I like blue. It's just kind of that universal color. We can also in here toggle on. So we have a title. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to my title and turn it on. And I'm going to type on my title back. And I'm going to make that font color on the title the same color as what I made the icon. And so now the user will see this back button. Now I might want to make that font just a little bigger so it stands out. I also might want to change that so it's bold, again, so it grabs the user's attention. But now what will happen is when we've created our detail report, so let's go ahead, I'm just going to hit the save button so it's there. If we go back to our initial report, our analysis report, and we're looking at the analysis report, and we go to our scatter chart, I'm going to select a client like Newegg. I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose the option to drill through, and you will notice that drill through page that you created. You're going to see two pages. One is the one we delivered and one is the one you just created. As soon as I select drill page, it's going to take all of those values and pass them over. So it passed over the year to date, it passed over 2019. And then it's showing me all the detail that makes it up. If I hit the filter option on here, I can kind of see what was being applied to that drill down. And if I use the back button, I go back to my original report. In this case, because I'm in a development mode, I have to hold the control key to make that work. Otherwise, it's just giving me the focus on the field. But in a user experience, their normal experience, they wouldn't have to hold down the control key. So that was automatically built in. You'll have that ability to go to those pages. Now, if I didn't want a user to ever be able to start at the drill page, I do have the ability to hide the page. So the only way the user, when they log in, could get there is if they went ahead and chose that option to go to drill through. They'll still see the page and they can get to it. They just can't start at that page. So when you have those pages that have all of that detail, you might not want users to just go in there and immediately start digging into the weeds, right? You want them to start at the higher level and do some analysis so they have a purpose in their research. Excellent. So now we've created our sales analysis page, we've created our detail, we created a drill through that allows us to do that. But now what if I want users to actually see this or to be able to use it? So we know that to do that, we need to publish the app. But before we publish, I guess I want to do the one thing that I always forget to do, and that is think about all of my users. Right now, I'm only thinking about the users that log in from a desktop. They have this nice big monitor to look at, and they're on their, in their browser and they're working. But our sales team is often mobile. And so they want to be able to use their phone or their tablet to look at this. So they have those mobile devices. For this report, I want to also create that mobile layout. So while I'm in this edit mode, I can go here to mobile layout and I can start setting up what's it going to look like for my user, that page for my user on their phone. And I see all the visualizations I created, including a title. And I just simply drag and drop these and resize them. It's super simple, super fast, but makes a huge difference for usability. So we want to make sure that we create reports that are purpose-built. Okay, if it needs to go out to a mobile device, that we put it out there. Think about what you're putting on here for your visuals. Those tables that we just did, that detail table, they don't usually look great on a phone. Phones, even the biggest phones, the ones that we carry only in our purses, you still can't read that data. So the pictures look really nice, really clean pictures. And that users can see, as well as those KPIs. So think about that as you're putting this together. Just because you had it on the app when they're on a desktop and they're in Power BI service does not mean you have to put it as a mobile app. This is just another element of the report, another feature. If I want back, I just go to Web Layout and I hit Save, and now I've done complete development. Now, in order for a user to see this on the web, we have to publish it. So what we would do is we would actually be developing this from our desktop application. So here I am jumping over, looking at the same report where we were in my desktop app. The only difference is in the desktop app, we have the ribbons across the top. In here, I simply click on the Publish app, and it will take all of my pages of my report. It will take my mobile view, and it will publish that out to the Power BI service. It does ask me to save my changes first. It gets picky like that. Oh, my VPN disconnected, of course, it timed out. But normally it would just prompt in really fast and say, hey, do you want, which workspace do you want to publish it to? And I would say I can go to my workspace. I could give it its own name if I wanted it to go to a workspace. And then when the user logged in, I'm going to go here, they're going to come in, and this is real world mode now. Now I'm a different user. I'm Sally. When I log in, this is what a real scenario might look like. You have all kinds of workspaces out there, not just the one from ours. Okay, but I might have a workspace out here, or I publish out to my users in what we call an app, where they click on financial app, and this is basically an app is built over a workspace. It's just a way to distribute the data to the user. They log in here and they can see, here's my report, here's my general ledger, and I've got different pages within the report. So as a user, to consume the information, they're logging in, they're either going to a workspace or they're going to an app, which is fine. Basically, we're seeing the same information. So if I went to the general ledger workspace, I'd see the same thing. Or I'm sorry, financial apps workspace, I see the same thing. There's reports. I've got 3 separate reports in here. In our sample, we had 1 report. Here I have 3. Okay. So in my job as the controller, I look at accounts payable, I look at accounts receivable, I look at the general ledger. And every one of these I'm monitoring all day. Lots of good information in here. However, it takes a little bit to navigate in and out of each one. And when I go in here, I know that there's certain pieces of information on this visual that are going to, if the number's too high or it's too low, it needs my attention. Okay. So the other concept that a user can have that is in Power BI that they can create is, instead of always navigating into reports, they can create what they call a dashboard. So within the workspace, they can create a dashboard. And what the dashboard does is it takes those key pieces of information from each report and it puts it onto one page. And I can see here from my general ledger report, these are the most important pieces of information I need to monitor. And in accounts payable, what's my current amount? My accounts receivable, what's over 150 days? Because that's what we're going to be writing off. If they haven't paid in 150 days, we're not going to see it, right? So I can just monitor these at a glance. Instead of having to navigate and jump between 3 reports, I have them all in one glance. That's called a dashboard. I can pin key pieces of information. To pin something to this dashboard, again, all your user's going to do is they're going to go to their reports. they're going to find that information that's really important to them, and they click this little pin button. It's this easy. And it says, which dashboard do you want to go to? I'm going to go to my financial dashboard. I hit pin. Okay. And I'm going to go to the dashboard, and there it is. Now, when you're in the dashboard, that was ugly what I just did. If I'm looking at the dashboard and I'm seeing an item, I'm like, well, what's going on here? I want to see more information. If I just click on that, it automatically takes me to that report and to the page on that report with all the data. So the users can quickly and easily get in and out of their information. Okay, they have slicers here. They can drill into more information if they need to. So very cool. Now, I did also mention that we can do this in the context of an app. An app is very similar to just going into the workspace and going to reports and clicking between them, but we build an app over a workspace. Now, when a user comes in, it's very similar, but their experience is a teeny bit different. In the app, they still have their dashboard, and we see our dashboard, but we also have each of the reports listed. And underneath the reports, we see the pages, and they can navigate through those. The other nice thing about the app is we can have other items embedded into this app. So one of the things in here, I have my standard reports. I can have paginated reports, those SSRS reports, like a balance sheet or an income statement. But what I can also do in here is I can create links to outside pages. So I have in here a link to our QuickLaunch Academy, which is our online learning site. If your user isn't quite sure how to do something or they need some help, they could come here, they click on QuickLaunch Academy, they put in their login credentials, and they come in and they can start watching videos that show them what they need to do or how to do a particular task within Power BI. Or how do I navigate around a workspace? Okay. So lots of information in here that they could do. We could create a link to your intranet where you might have some procedural documents out there for them. How do I fix some errors? If I have some, data integrity errors, how do I go into JD Edwards to resolve that? So you can set up links to outside sites. When you set up the link, you can have it either open inside the app like I did here, which keeps the user all in one place, or you can have it open in different tabs. So there's all kinds of crazy things you can do here for the users to really enhance their experience and help them to work better, faster, and get to the information they need easier. You guys, thank you for hanging in there with me. I know we went a little bit long, but I hope it was worth it. And I'm really hoping that nobody broke down in tears, but you can put it in the survey if you did. I'll give you some extra love there. But anyway, you guys, you've been great. And if you have any questions, please reach out and let Adam or myself know. We're happy to answer them. Adam, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thanks again for walking us through that today. That was wonderful. There were a few kind of noticed groupings of some questions out there. So things about, what other modules outside of sales are supported. I think there are 15 modules currently at QuickLaunch: GL, AP, AR, sales, inventory, procurement, manufacturing, job cost, contract billing, HR payroll. So we can kind of review that with you if anybody's interested. Some people ask as well, how long will the sandbox be available? We're going to keep these open through the month of April. So if you find that you might be interested in some of the other modules that we just mentioned, we can kind of turn the sandbox into a kind of brief free trial for you and add some of the other samples out there that will give you access to do some ad hoc in other areas. Maybe it's general ledger, AP, AR, or something like that. So just let us know. About some people asked about making sure the recording. So yeah, on the survey when you hang up, let's specify in the survey that you want a copy of the recording, and we'll send you a link to that. And then some other people are asking about maybe something like a one-on-one type demonstration for their company. So yeah, if anybody's interested in that, then just let us know. So yeah, thank you again, everybody, for spending the time with us today. And I know we're living in some crazy times, so anything that you think we might be able to do to help you, we're here. So we look forward to following up. And thank you again. Have a great rest of your week. And thank you again, Michelle, for a great session. Talk to you soon.